Basically, this generation is more liberal, more tolerant, more Democrat-leaning than the one before. It's not just because they're young.
For another point of view, it's Hard News with Russell Brown and Wammo on Kiwi.
He's head blogger at the Hard News blog at publicaddress.net and also running the Media 7 show on TVNZ7. Morning, Russell.
Good morning.
First up, let's cover off the Phil Goff and Darren Hughes affair. We haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. Phil Goff is still safe in his leadership of the Labour Party, and he seems to have the support of the party itself.
Yeah, well, to some extent. I think there isn't a better option at the moment. I think there's probably no doubt that quite a few members of his caucus aren't particularly happy with his performance. And I think they've got a right to be. I mean, you've got to have some sympathy with Goff for being landed with this Darren Hughes situation.
Yeah.
There's almost no right answer to how you handle something like that. But the way that he's said directly contradictory things it's become a little bit farcical. This week when he said, well, even if he's cleared by the police and they lay no charges against Darren Hughes, he will still lose. He would still have lost his positions because he showed poor judgment, and I think he did. But if that's the case, if no matter what happens, he's going to lose his position as chief whip.
Yeah.
Then why not do that in the first place?
Straight away.
Yeah, it just made no sense at all. I think that was where I really lost patience with it, frankly.
And then now, since he's said, well, no, if he's if he's cleared by the police, then there's a room for him to come back.
Yeah. Which you would hope there would be, of course. But I just think that thing of no matter what happens, he would have lost his positions and have to start again. Well, why not just do that?
Was he trying to play John Key's game but completely losing? Then John Key's game is, well, we'll see where public opinion's going with this and then I'll make my decision after that.
Yeah, well, in a way, that's actually the irony, is that he pursued Key over his handling of Richard Worth's troubles. And the interesting thing there is that Key actually sat on knowledge of the Richard Worth stuff for 2 weeks, about as long as Goff knew about Darren Hughes. But he did announce that Richard Worth was stepping down from his role.
Is the difference in this case, because the media see Phil Goff as easy pickings, they're much more likely to go after the weaker leader?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. Had Goff been in a stronger position, all round, he would have probably been able to move on from this. But yeah, there's the media particularly. I mean, and you're seeing it. All the commentary coming out of Wellington is very much about the game.
Yeah.
And that'll be frustrating to people who think that parties' policies should be discussed. But that's kind of the way things get seen there.
It's really not about the reality of the scenario, is it?
No. And the Dominion Post seems to have gone completely over the top in its speculation about a leadership coup. I mean, I'm sure that kind of thing was discussed, but it was very inside the beltway, that paper's coverage.
Yeah.
It was very Wellington insider, and this is the kind of affair it's become, and everyone claiming to know more than everyone else about what's being plotted and planned, which it actually isn't. Doesn't serve the country terribly well.
No, because all it does is just fill up space on a page. Isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about because this is what you're talking about on Media 7 this week, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which most of the negotiation for this has happened in secret.
Yes.
But it revolves around our copyright legislation here in New Zealand.
That's a big part of it. I mean, basically, this is like a party that we started because we couldn't get into the cool kids parties, which being some form of trade agreement with the US.
Right.
So 2005, Brunei, Chile, New Zealand and Singapore start their own party, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And now you've got another group of countries, including Australia and the US, negotiating to come in. And it's the US where the problem is, and particularly on intellectual property. the US negotiating position, as leaked, is astonishing. It basically reverses, would require us to pretty much reverse most of what we've done in copyright law in New Zealand in the last 10 years. And including things like an extension of copyright terms, sometimes out to 120 years from publication of works, going back to the guilt upon accusation thing that thanks to a very good campaign, didn't feature in our copyright amendment bill. No more parallel imports. There's a lot there.
What puzzles me about all this is that they don't have these laws in the States.
No, that's the astonishing thing.
In fact, they have some of the best copyright law in the world in the United States.
Yeah. There are good and bad things about copyright law there, but there are very strong fair dealing rights, fair use rights, which would be completely steamrolled by if everyone had to adopt this. They're talking about it being a criminal matter if you have to break a technical protection measure like some DRM on something in order to exercise your fair use rights, even if the content that you're trying to get at is in the public domain. So the moment that you defeat a digital rights management system, you're committing a criminal offence, even if you're allowed to access the content it's protecting.
Crikey.
It's just madness.
So at what point do these negotiations then pop out of this backroom kind of secrecy stuff and actually into our parliament where it can be debated about whether or not we'll adopt them?
Well, quite. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that we could end up being committed to here that our parliament is not going to get the chance to discuss for quite some time. It's bizarre. The whole thing is slightly less secretive than it was, thanks to quite an outcry. But all we really know of what's going on in there is stuff that's leaked and the occasional statement from our negotiators, who, to be fair, our MED people who are doing the negotiating don't think much of what the Americans have put up either.
Right.
The problem is that when you look at the downsides of this sort of thing, and you start looking for the benefits for New Zealand, and I don't know, maybe a bit better access for our primary produce, because I'm not anti-trade. I'm a big believer in trade agreements. I think international trade's really important for New Zealand, but this really doesn't seem to have much for us.
No, I mean, let's face it, the American consumer doesn't have a lot of money to buy overseas goods with these days, anyway.
Yeah, and there are other things in there outside the intellectual property stuff as well. The investor law, it suggests, is kind of scary. That basically governments put themselves in danger of being sued if they pass a law that can be found to have affected the interests of a foreign investor. Yeah. It's madness. All
right, we'll look for more on that on the Media 7 show screening on Thursday evening on TVNZ7.
Indeed.
Thanks, Russell.
Righto.
Cheers. Russell Brown over at publicaddress.net.